Okie doke. Let's see if we can get started here, guys. How do I turn the music off again? Hi, everyone. Okay. So, yeah, so for you guys who are going to be watching back, and there's actually maybe one or two of you who are actually watching live. That's brilliant. Fair play. Yeah, this is going to be continuing on from what we've been looking at for you guys who are asking me, you know, more about harmony and more about music theory. We're going to be looking at a little bit more of chromatic harmony and kind of over the next week or two, bringing it all together. So we'll be looking at borrowed chords, altered chords, and maybe even augmented sixth chords tonight to see can we get through like the final version of all of those chords, all the chromatic chords, the sort of umbrella term that we've been looking at over the past few weeks. And then that's kind of as far as you'd ever need to go with harmony. Once you understand secondary dominance, once you understand borrowed chords, once you understand altered chords, diminished seventh chords, some of the jazz harmony and altered chords and augmented sixth chords that we're looking at tonight, that's kind of what we've been looking at over the last month or so, and that's really about as far as you go. You're beginning to get into chromatic harmony where you're adding so many accidentals and sharps and flats to a chord that tonality or harmony itself begins to break down. So you kind of hit the end of like the 19th century into the 20th century, and in the classical world, that's when probably some of the most dramatic changes in classical music occurred. Sort of the absence of key and, you know, the abandonment of, you know, traditional triadic harmony, and also coincides with the rise of jazz and pop music as well. So yeah, there's not really much more after the next couple of weeks. Everything after this will be, you know, sort of going over other topics and maybe further exploring what comes next. What's the next major thing to happen in the world of music? Okay, so I'm just going to share my desktop for a wee sec. Let me see. Oh, I lost my face there for a wee sec. Just making sure I'm still there. Yeah, I'm still there. Okay. So this is what we've been looking at. I'm just going to bring up a handout that kind of summarizes everything that we're going to be looking at and some of the things we've already looked at. So don't be terrified looking at this just yet, guys, because believe it or not, there's quite a bit we've already done. Everything that's in black we've done already. That's your traditional diatonic harmony, the chords that belong to the key. The Neapolitan chord, the one that we looked at for Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, we've already looked at that. We've looked at all the purple ones as well. If we zoom in, you might be able to see the secondary dominance. You know, the 5 of 6 going to chord 6, the 5 of 4 going to chord 4. So they're all in there as well. And really the only ones that we need to look at tonight are these augmented sixth chords. Maybe these borrowed chords as well in blue. We kind of had a little look at these last week, but we didn't really get stuck into it in a big way. It was just, you know, an introduction to them. So we'll be looking at them properly this week. Borrowed chords, the ones in blue. And there is like an altered chord there as well. There's one, the dominant altered chord here, the one with a little plus symbol. That's probably the most frequently used one. There may be even a couple of other diminished seventh chords that we'll look at in orange here, and sort of so-called common tone diminished sevenths, because they're quite popular as well. Okay, so let me just see if I can get the audio working here for a wee sec. Let's see. Okay, that should be working. I'm just going to double check to make sure you guys can actually hear this. If I was to click on this, this should be a wee thing. Yeah, trust myself. I made this little handout. Okay, hopefully you guys are actually hearing the chord there as well. When I click on these chords, you'll be able to hear them. Just an audio. So that's your chord 1, your chord 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I made this for some of my music students who, you know, don't play piano. I won't bother clicking on all of these, but they're all embedded. Every single one of these chords has their own little harmony. I wonder if that purple has its own harmony. No, that's just the actual dominant. Okay. Yeah. 2. Nice. Okay, so 2 is in there. 5. 1. I'm just going to play it on the piano. Okay. So if you want this, actually, this will be up on my website. If you want like a chart, it shows you where all the most important chords in music in general, guys, where they all occur in the standard sort of progressions. Not every composer will sit with something this ridiculous in front of them and compose based off of this, but it's just to show you where these chords traditionally go. You know, where does like chord 4 want to go? Follow the black arrows, where it can go to 7 or 5, and it can also go to 1. It can also go to 2. And I can also use this black arrow to go down to chord 1 as well, second inversion. That's what 1C means. So in this handout, it's all interactive. And this will also be up on the website, this one here, where I've written out all the chords above. So it's all in the key of C. So hopefully that will help. And that you're not dealing with too many accidentals already. Okay, so let's see. That will be up on the website, and that will be up on the website with them all written out and a wee summary underneath. Bear in mind, guys, that this handout, it's just them written out. Excuse me. This is just the harmony written out, okay? Whereas this one, there is no harmony written out, but at least you get to hear it. So you'll have both of them on the website if you want to download them. I'll leave little links when the blog post goes live. So check out the blog on Top Score Music Academy. I'm hoping the link is in the chat for my website. I'm going to do that from now on. Just post all my sort of contact details there if anyone needs to chat. Okay. So that's what we're aiming for, is to understand all of this. And we have done quite a lot of these. We've looked at the key of C major for these chords. We've looked at all of these already, all the ones in purple. We've looked at the one in green, the Neapolitan chord. And we're going to be looking at borrowed chords, altered chords, and the augmented sixth chords this week and next week. We may even just venture a little bit into fully diminished and half diminished seventh chords. I tend to cover this one in something a wee bit more to do with sort of jazz harmony, this sort of stuff, because sevenths, ninths, elevenths, when you add more and more notes to a chord, you're sort of venturing into more sort of advanced sort of 20th century harmony. Usually you're going to see that in jazz and blues music. So I tend not to do it too much for classical students, except for the seventh chords. That's really it. Okay, excuse me. So let's look at today's borrowed chords. Yeah, so we're still in chromatic harmony. No big change there. Just make sure my piano now works. If I can get this little app up and running. There we go. So Classroom Maestro, guys, this is the application that I use. And just also make sure that, yeah, it's in the major. There we go. Yeah, chord 1. Excuse me. I might just turn down the piano a wee smidgen. Okay. If the piano's too loud, guys, let me know, and I will turn it down, because it does look quite loud, although it's very quiet in my headphones. It might be very loud to you guys. So, borrowed chords, special type of chromatic. Okay, in other words, a chord that has at least one note that doesn't belong to the key that we're in. We're going to stay in the key of C major and C minor, guys. They're the two easiest ones for our purposes, okay? But this applies, the whole information that we're looking at applies to any key. But C major is the easiest to see, where all these accidentals or all these chromatic notes are creeping in. Unlike the other ones that we're looking at with the Neapolitan, and we're going to be looking at the augmented sixth chords, these type of chromatic chords are more common in major keys. Okay, you can get borrowed chords in minor keys. And in fact, one of the most famous examples, if you were saying the key of C minor, would be something that has like Tierce de Picardie is the sort of technical term. It sounds like a major chord at the very end. You hear the major chord. with a C sharp. That's a major chord. So even though the whole piece may be in A minor, you have a major chord at the very end. That's one very famous example from the classical world, where a lot of pieces written in the 18th century, the middle of the early part of the 18th century and most of the 17th century, the so-called Baroque period, most of the music written during that period in a minor key was going to be written for the church. Now, it was at the time as well, a lot of the music was beginning to be written for court musicians and court orchestras and for kings and nobles and, you know, aristocrats, rich patrons basically who could afford an orchestra. So it was becoming more secular and instrumental music was becoming far more popular, but still the main driving force in the Baroque period would have been vocal music, and the main branch of vocal music would have been church music, music for religious purposes. And it was common when you're writing in a minor key, very common, to end the piece in a major chord like that. So you may have had a lot of serious, you know, sort of serious emotions to the minor pieces up until that point, and then the final chord is a bit brighter, like, you know, salvation has arrived, that type of thing. So that's why it was used quite a bit in the Baroque period, and also for vocal music. It's still quite an effective thing even today, you know, to be writing something. We've got a very heavy, sad, you know, or serious sort of feel to it, and then suddenly the very last chord, after listening to the music for maybe 10-15 minutes, it's suddenly very bright at the end. Okay, so that's when you have a borrowed chord in a minor key. That's the most famous example, would be Tierce de Picardie. But as you can see here, guys, with the slide, the most common way to do it is in a major key, to borrow from your parallel minor. So if you're in the key of C major, you're borrowing, or here's basically stealing chords from C minor and using them in the key of C major. That's what your parallel minor is. Okay, you haven't really modulated or changed key actually, because C is still your main central note, your main sort of point of where all the other chords are going to be based off of. So C major, C minor, it's just, you know, it's not real modulation, so it's quite easy to borrow chords from each key. The most common places to do this are going to be 2, 4, and 6. Okay, those are the most common chords that you're going to see being borrowed from the parallel minor. So you're borrowing chord 2, and if you've looked at the handouts before on diatonic chords, you'll know that when you're in a minor key, chord 2 is a diminished chord. So if you're in the key of, say, C minor, actually we probably should put this into C minor. Let me see, so you guys can see it. Let's add the 3 flats. There we go. That's all I need to do. Then get rid of that. There we go. So now instead of coming up as D sharp, it will come up as E flat. That's your chord 1 in C minor. That's your chord 2 in C minor. It's actually mostly a 7th chord, but it can be just an ordinary triad, and it can also be found frequently in first inversion, you know, with the F at the bottom rather than the D at the bottom. So first inversion, root position. So taking that chord from C minor and putting it into a key that's in C major, so it's going to be in the same place. Instead of just going 2, 5, 1, you're going to do the same thing, but just in the key is adding that instead of that. That's all. So if we go back and put this into C major and just get rid of the, I don't want you to see whether it's flat or sharp, because it may be a bit confusing seeing that. I'm just going to put it back into C major and just get rid of this entirely, just so you guys don't see that. All you're going to see is the notes now. Okay, so there's your chord 2 from C minor, but we're going to have it go to in the key of C major. So there's your 2, that's your normal 2-5-1 in the key of C major. Chord 2, 5, 1. So instead of just doing that, you could add in your minor chord or your diminished chord 2, 2, and in the same place. This makes it a bit more interesting. The one that I have in mind for that would be, I think is it Creep by Radiohead? Yeah, actually, there's quite a few pieces actually that's going to have that diminished chord too. You can go straight to chord 1 as well, because in pop music that feels very much like a 4. This is another borrowed chord there. So we're still in C major. So you can see that the 2 and the 4 are actually very closely related here. So you still have the A flat in both, you still have the F in both. And in fact, if you were to add your C there to make this a 7th chord. There's my mouse drawing. Yeah, that is also part of chord 4. So all of chord 4, this minor chord 4, is actually going to be inside of this diminished chord, this diminished 7th chord now that we've added the C. You don't have to do that. You can just leave it as an ordinary chord 2. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It sounds nice. But you can always just add a wee bit more to make it a bit more richer, a bit more interesting maybe. There it is. So there's your chord 2 of the 7th, and there's your chord 4. It's basically all the same notes, except you're missing one there. That's why it works well at cadences, that chord. Even though you're thinking 2 to chord 1 is not really a cadence. But sounds nice. Cadences being the sort of end of a phrase or the end of a piece, you know, just to finish it off. Like, it's a bit unusual to go from 2 to 1. But if you decorate it enough, it can actually sound quite pleasant. So 2 and 4 for borrowed chords, for me, they're very interchangeable, very, very similar. They occur in the same place. They usually go to chord 5, or they can go straight to chord 1 to end the piece. So they kind of have a similar function. You know, they're in the same place in the music, and they're very similar in sound. And there's not many students who'd hear the difference between this and this. It's really only that note. If you add enough of that note, then maybe the difference becomes a bit more obvious. Okay, so I had a little window that was open there. I'm going to do it again just to see, because it closed down on me at the start. Because I think I had too many audio files open, and it has closed down. Oh well. I'll open up a fresh one. Let me see. I'll just open up the file that I had for you guys again. See. Yeah, there was a great Radiohead Creep was the one. Use of the minor chord 4. Let me see if I can get the chord progressions for that, just because I can't play it on YouTube, of course, guys. The original, it's copyrighted, of course, and rightly so. It's a brilliant tune. If I go to just the Radiohead, chords. So it's just me playing it, unfortunately. Let me see. Yeah, okay. So let me see. I'll just put this into C. When you were here before, look in your eyes. Interesting chord there. You look like an angel. Skin makes me cry. You flow like a feather. So there's the first borrowed chord, was that F minor. Okay, so that is your chord 4 that's been borrowed from C minor into C major, because as you guys can hear from the start, we're in the key of C major. Your F minor. Yeah, so it's got a very, I would say maybe almost like a melancholy, like a nostalgic or melancholic sort of feel to it. Having those borrowed chords in there, they tend, because they're coming from the parallel minor, they tend not to bring like usually the most positive or happiest sounds. The Beatles did this quite a lot though, so there is places where it does work quite, sort of an upbeat way, depending on the tempo, the speed of the piece. But obviously if we're dealing with Radiohead, we're probably not going to be dealing with like the happiest pieces ever written. But you're still dealing with some of the best ever written. So yeah, that's 4 and 2, very similar. And you can also see that if we just continue the pattern going all the way up here, that 4 is interchangeable with 6 as well. So all 3 of these chords can kind of be used in one place or another, like 2 going to 4, or 4 going to 2, or 4 going to 6. They can lead from one to the other, and most of them tend to be predominant chords. These 3 chords are your main 3 chords that want to go to chord 5. Chord 1 can go to 5 as well, but these are the 3 ones that are really, really nice. The A flat is still there, the C is still there, the new note this time is E flat, and you guessed it, if you add that in here, you've got a 7th, a minor 7th chord. So you can have that in chord 4 as well. Have I just done the Beatles by doing that? Yeah. There. Da, 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 da. That's desperate. I can't remember the name of that song. I'm not going to edit that out. I'm going to keep that in just to show my students that I can't remember the name of one of the most famous Beatles songs. That's not bad at all for a music teacher. If anybody can help me out, go for it. Whatever the name of the Beatles song is. Is it In My Life? I don't know if that's the name of it. I know that's in there somewhere as a lyric. But that's the sort of thing you're looking for anyway. So what you have in there is that chord, but inside of chord 4. So yeah, you can do it that way if you want, or you can just leave everything as it is and just, normal minor chord 4, just don't bother with the 7th. But the chord 6, that's a wee bit more positive. That can go down to 4. So all of these chords can go from one to the other. Like 6 can go down to 4, 4 can go down to 2. Yeah, so it can, you know, the usual sort of progression. You've seen this already with the diatonic chords. You know, 6 here can go to 4 here, and then 4 can go down to, oh, wrong arrow, can go down to 2 here. Yeah, and then 2 can go to your 5, and then 5 can go to your 1. So we've already seen that with diatonic harmony, that 6, 4, 2, 5, 1 is a very standard chord progression, and any variation of that, by the way. So instead of 6, 4, 2, 5, 1, 4, 2, 5, 1, 2, 5, 1, 4, 5, 1, 6, 4, 5, 1, anything that moves in this sort of direction, regardless where it goes, you know, in the interim, like if it goes down to 2 or not, doesn't matter. So we can go from 6 to 4 to 2 to 5 to 1, or even just 6 to 2 to 5 to 1. It's all going in the same, you know, well, it's actually going that way, all going in the same direction. Okay, so it doesn't really matter which one you choose. So you can replace all of those with your borrowed chords, your flattened 6, your minor chord 4, your diminished chord 2, and all of those can move to each other as well. 6 can go to 4, 4 can go to 2, or 6 can go to 2, and they can all move to 5, same as before. You've just changed the quality of the chord. You haven't really changed its function. It still behaves the same way. A minor chord 4 and a major chord 4 both want to move to the same places. Diminished chord 2 and the minor chord 2 both want to move to the same places. And the minor chord 6 and the flattened major chord 6 both want to move to the same places. It's just that with some of them, you've got maybe a little bit more interesting places you can go. This flattened 6, for example, has a new arrow that it moves to the flattened 7. So that's another borrowed chord. That's nowhere near as popular. I didn't include it here because it's nowhere near as popular as these 3. Like the diminished chord 2, the minor chord 4, and the major chord 6. They are far more common than the subtonic chord. The only time I really ever see that chord, flattened chord 7, is when, if I get rid of all of my things in here. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so the only time I see that chord 7 being used is when it's just a tiny wee arrow, but it's when it moves to chord 4 here. Okay, you get that quite a lot again in the Beatles, quite a bit. Yeah, so the flattened chord 7 to the chord 4, and then chord 4 to chord 5 to chord 1, whatever way you want to move. Like if you think of da, na, 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 hey Jude. Yeah, remember the name of that one. So chord 1 again is 4. There's your flattened chord 7. Da, 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 da. To chord 4. Which is exactly the same as that other chord that I've heard from who was it who did that? It's sort of same chord progression as the Beatles. Oh, this is where my memory fails me as I'm definitely getting older. You can definitely feel it. Let me see. In the pop world, I wish I could play these things for you guys so you could actually hear them. Yeah, Elbow, One Day Like This. So boom boom. Trying to remember what it was, what the lyrics are. Let me see. I'm gonna try and play it without playing it, so I can see the lyrics. So yeah, I've just muted it there. Oh, holy cow! Only now I see the light. because let me see, stumbling over what I say, well, it's looking like a beautiful day. Yeah. Oh, throw those curtains wide, of course. That's the chorus. So, throw those curtains wide. One day like this a year will see me right. Something like right. Throw those curtains wide. One day like this a year would suit me right. Exactly the same chord progression as da 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 da. So yeah, you've got it there. In a lot of pop music, that sort of movement between 1 flat and 7 going to 4, 1 flat and 7 going to 4. Okay, so it is quite a popular one to do. The Beatles are obviously well known for doing that in a lot of their compositions, not just in Hey Jude, but so many other groups have sort of copied that sort of chord progression because it's just so effective. 1 flat and 7 to 4. Your normal 7, you see, in the key of C major, is a diminished chord. That's your leading note chord, as you guys can hopefully see this if I zoom in a wee bit. Yeah, this chord here is your leading note chord, your diminished chord. Okay. Look up the intervals blog post if you're not sure about why is this one diminished and the other one is, capital major chord. This is lowercase with a wee circle. That's all stuff we've already looked at, and it is in another blog post on the website, and a video as well on the YouTube channel, so you can go through that just to refresh your memory if you need to. Oh, no. So go away. There we go. That chord 7, leading note chord, wants to go to chord 1. That's its function. Leading note rising as it usually wants to. Leading note going up to 1. Okay, so but if you flatten it, you've made it the major chord now. It's not called the leading note chord anymore. It's a more technical name is now the subtonic. It's a full tone beneath the tonic. Just like the subdominant is a full tone beneath the dominant. So this is your dominant, subdominant, tonic, subtonic. That subtonic chord, or the flattened 7, whatever way you want to think of it, nice borrowed chord wants to go to 4. And then 4 can go to 1, or can go to 5, and then 1. It's probably nice you go straight to 4. Or sorry, straight to 1. 4, straight to 1. You're gonna reap just what you sow. So yeah, it's very effective, as you can hear. Hopefully, somebody obviously listen to the real music guys and not just take my word for it. It's so much more effective. I wish for education purposes, I'd be happy to have. Not as if my videos are monetized anyway. I'd be very happy to have it never monetized and just be able to use the music just for educational purposes to let you guys hear. Only little snippets is all I would ever need. But go away and check out. The Beatles and Elbow, just to hear these things yourself. See, can you spot, especially in the choruses for both of them? They're exactly the same key, exactly in the same type of music genre. They're in the sort of use the same instruments, the same tempo. So there's a lot of crossover, and it's both very effective. Different lyrics, of course. Okay, so let me get back to borrowed chords. Let's get rid of those arrows. Yeah, so as I said before, minor keys already offer so many different possibilities. So due to the harmonic and melodic minor scales that you can use, you can get the different chord, almost 2 different types of chord for every scale degree, except for chord 1. There is really only chord 1 in a minor key. But the exception for borrowed chords in minor keys is the Tierce de Picardie that we already looked at. Okay, so that's a nice wee one to check out for classical music. Just go into any sort of religious music from the Baroque period, have a look at Handel, have a look at Bach, have a look at their masses and anything that was written for the church and in the chorales and oratorios and stuff, and have a look out for any of the minor keys particularly, and can you hear the final chord of a section or a phrase and suddenly it becomes from minor becomes major. Okay, that's your Tierce de Picardie. Watch out for that one. Okay. Yeah, these are the ones that I kind of went over a wee bit last week. Ich rolle nicht. Yeah, again, copyright. I gotta be careful that I actually have to play them. Ich rolle nicht. Wenn das. Oh yeah, it's D actually. My goodness. That's one of the lowest notes I've ever seen on the piano. Way down here. Not far from the absolute extreme. Oh, that should be. Da, 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 da. Ba, ba, da, da. Okay, so yeah, have a wee listen out for Schumann's Ich rolle nicht. Lovely lead, German lead, and very easy to sort of learn if you're a piano player, because it's like this the whole way through, where you just have repeated quaver chords in the right hand and, you know, octave minims in the left hand the whole way through. But the harmony makes the harmony really effective that way, and really allows the voice to stand out. You kind of need both. So on the word, even though my heart is breaking or doth break, yeah, on the word Hertz is where you get that lovely borrowed chord from C minor, the chord 2. Here you could see that I tried to put a line through this. Oh, good. That's that corrected. Didn't realize I could do that. Can I make it slightly longer without messing it up? Oh, that's perfect. That's the way I wanted it. Okay. So it's a half diminished. We'll be looking at that in a different video. What do we mean by half diminished and fully diminished? It's a half diminished 7th chord, but there's a lot of exam boards like ABRSM doesn't even recognize the difference for like grade 6 and 7 and 8 students. They just, as long as you say it's diminished, they don't really care if it's half or full. And the same is happening in A level, I've noticed as well. A level musicians, you know, they don't really recognize the difference between them. They should, because there is an important difference. It's all to do with that 7th itself, the 7th in the chord. So we'll be looking at that in another video. They're very powerful chords, and they're brilliant for modulation to distant keys. So yeah, we'll have a look at that. We'll devote enough time to that in a different video. It's too much to try and squish it in now. Same for the sort of 9th and 11th and 13th. We kind of looked at that before, very briefly, in one of these videos, one of these Ask Me Anything sessions. So again, I'll do a proper one for you guys, like just devoted solely to the jazz harmony, like 9th, 11th, and 13th. Okay, so that's a great example of the chord 2. Borrowed. Another great one for chord 4 this time. Overture to a Midsummer Night's Dream by Mendelssohn. I think he wrote this when he was only like 18 or something. So one of the most famous overtures, classical overtures, written in the Romantic period. But you would definitely want to check out the original recording. This is all meant to be in the woodwinds, not on the piano. So you have like the really... That's too high. So you have your chord 1. And then you have your... minor chord 4, and then I'll have to spread chord play this. Okay, so that's all ultra quiet as well, and then the fairies take over with fast violin playing at that point. So it's a lovely start to the piece, but it's very gentle. Meant to be magic. 5. Yeah, so check it out. The very, very start. And the same with the Schumann as well, the lead, the German lead, both at the very start of those pieces. Easy to spot then. Sometimes you have to listen, like maybe for, you know, 4 or 5 minutes into some pieces before you find examples. So I try not to do that with too many of the stuff for my students, although this is another exception. Yeah, the flattened chord 6, and yeah, opening from the last movement of Mahler's Ninth Symphony. Yeah, that's another one. B double flat written as A natural. Yeah, okay, so it may not look like a flattened sixth, you know, as such. In the music itself, it may look a wee bit unusual, but it will sound like it. Okay, so some of those are really good examples, but that one I would struggle with on the piano. So in D flat major, that's your chord 1. Then your chord 3, actually, in first inversion. Now, this is a tricky little chord, this. That's your flattened sixth. Then it goes to your... Then you're into chord 4. You're completely different harmony at this point. Dum da. I absolutely butchered that. I have to get used to the D flat major key signature. So yeah, the melody's meant to be. So be dum, 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 dum. It's a bit unusual to have that flat and sixth there. Actually, that should be. This is not easy. Yeah, hard to play. That's meant to be a Ninth Symphony. Mahler's not easy, guys. As any of you guys will know, he was one of these romantic composers. If you've listened to your classical music, you'll know that he wrote like huge symphonies that these are meant to be performed by hundreds of musicians. So beautiful. The Eighth Symphony in particular is quite large. Look up Mahler, Ninth Symphony, very opening, the last movement. Okay, and just the third chord in, really. That's where you have your flattened sixth. So that's probably a better example, actually, than the Schubert. Because that's scherzo, so it's going to be allegro vivace, fast and lively. It's hard to hear it. So yeah, it's played quite quickly. I know it's a long chord, but it's still quite quick. Whereas this is nice and relaxed at the beginning. There's loads of other examples, don't get me wrong. This is another one by Schubert. Beethoven, the Moonlight Sonata again. I'm not even going to get into the fact that it's the secondary dominant of the flattened sixth chord. So yeah, basically you're building a chromatic chord on top of another one. That's really advanced sort of stuff. I'm not going to go into that. And we're just only looking at borrowed chords. I'm not even going to look at the modulation. This is more for my grade 7 and grade 8 students especially. You guys will want to check out how to use these chords for modulating, like as a pivot chord. So like, just say you want to get from D major with 2 sharps to F major with 1 flat. It's kind of a distant modulation. So the way to do distant modulations quickly is to use these chromatic harmonies, not just borrowed chords. You could use all the ones that we looked at so far, and you can also use augmented sixth chords and diminished chords, the Neapolitan chord, borrowed chords, altered chords, anything that has a chromatic note that can be used as a different purpose in a different key. Yeah, you can use that as a borrowed chord. Here, for example, in D major, your borrowed chord 4 is this G minor chord. So remember, if you're in D major, da, 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 dum, that's our tonic chord. So to have that, okay, so having that minor chord 4, that becomes chord 2 in F major. And then when you get to, so that when you get to this chord down here, okay, so yeah, that's how we got from D major to F major by using a borrowed chord. So having that. And then you get to that lovely. It's all meant to be very pianissimo, guys, as well. I'm not paying any attention whatsoever to the dynamics or articulation to this, so apologies. It's really just the harmony we're looking at anyway. Okay, the fact that it's a borrowed chord being used here. Yeah, so, yeah, there's another one being used. Again, Brahms' German Requiem. That's probably nowhere near the start, though. Not even going to try and find it. But it's a good example for any of you guys who want to go to the actual original recording and look out for these parts. Extended borrowings, again, we'll leave that for a different day. I think if we ever have time, that's actually the beginning of the wedding march, yeah, from Mendelssohn again. So ba 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 ba. Sure, everyone has heard that at some stage. So that's where you could consider maybe your, instead of chord 1 in C major, here it's considered chord 6 in E minor. So when you get to this weird sounding chord that most people don't listen to that, you know, on its own, they just hear it as part of the da 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 dum dum dum. But here, if you listen to it, it's very, very and then to this next chord. Back to C major. But did you hear all the sort of borrowed chords inside of that key of E minor just for a second? In the, you know, we're suggest that we're in a completely different key. We've borrowed so much from a foreign key that it feels like we went into the minor just for a second, but we haven't really, you know, modulated to that key. We've modulated through it. We've gone through E minor, that 5-1, and then suddenly we're back in C major again. You would not say that we're in E minor for 2 bars and then C major for the rest of it. You know, that doesn't make sense. So when you borrow enough, it helps modulate through a key. Unusual chromatic chord, which is the very first one with that F sharp. That F sharp doesn't belong. Neither does the F sharp or the D sharp. And again. And then we're out of it now. Yeah, most people have heard that and recognize that tune, but they probably wouldn't really, you know, care about how much of a chromatic harmony is involved in it. But that isn't really the point. The point is to hear it and sort of, you know, enjoy the music. That's the main point of all music, of course. But the main point that we're looking at here is that even in some of the most famous pieces of music, it can go by with completely unnoticed about how much effort or, you know, chromatic harmony was involved in creating one of the most memorable pieces of music, the Wedding March, for example. So yeah, that's a really good example. So we've borrowed from E minor chord 6, we've borrowed from E minor chord 2, we've borrowed from E minor chord 5, and we've borrowed from E minor chord 1. So yeah, obviously 6, 2, 5, 1. It's really just in the key of E minor. That should really have been da da ba ba bum. So 6, 2, 5, 1. Yeah, but you don't get that feeling when you're listening to it of, oh, this is really heavy and minor, because it's you sort of blend it into the key of C major. You're borrowing those chords just for dramatic effect, of course. One of the most dramatic pieces of music ever. Deliberately used, of course, then the wedding march for a lot of weddings. Okay, so what can we sort of summarize here about borrowed chords? You're nearly always borrowing from the parallel minor into the parallel major. So taking from the minor, put it into the major. That's the number one thing. Number two, the three most common chords to do that for are 2, 4, and 6. So chord 2 in minor keys is a diminished chord. Chord 4 from minor keys is a minor chord. And chord 6 from minor keys is a major chord. So each one of those is a different quality. You have one minor, one diminished, and one major chord that you're borrowing from the key of a minor key and putting it into that minor key's parallel major key. And as you can tell, you can get really dramatic results from it. It's used in pop music. It's used in German love songs. It's used in overtures to concert overtures. It's used in piano sonatas and entire symphonies. Requiem masses are in there somewhere. Yeah, requiem masses. The wedding march as well from Mendelssohn. We saw it in Elbow and the Beatles. The Beatles and Elbow, put them in the order that we first heard them. So yeah, that it's in every style of music, guys. These borrowed chords creates really dramatic changes and brings a lot of extra color to the pieces as well. It'd be really boring just to use the same, 7 chords over and over and over again. So that's why we're using them here, just to create color. So yeah, for any of you, any of the guys who you're probably not going to have time. I was going to say any of the guys I teach piano to, they're all busy doing A-levels. But for anyone who isn't one of my piano students but plays piano, have a go at playing the Mendelssohn one, because that's got a few in there. You've got the 6 and the 2. You don't have the 4, but you can't have everything. And see if you can have a go at learning that and playing that up to full speed. And do you notice when you do it now with the analysis that, oh my goodness, yeah, I can actually feel the minor key, and then we've been brought into it and brought out of it very quickly. Maybe Mendelssohn was trying to make a point about marriage in this particular piece of music. Who knows? Okay, moving on to altered chords. This is the sort of the next one. This is a very tiny wee one, guys. Altered chords. This is an easy one to know. In addition to borrowed chords, any triad can be altered by raising one of its pitches. So, yeah, I suppose you could argue then, aren't borrowed chords like a type of altered chord? Yeah, but borrowed chords exist, in the parallel minor. Altered chords don't really. When you're taking, like, say, chord 1 here, you're not borrowing the minor chord 1, from G minor. You're altering chord 1 into a completely new chord. Okay, it doesn't exist in G major, doesn't exist in G minor, so you can't really call it a borrowed chord. But in the same way, you're just maybe changing one of its notes. Okay, now when you do that with borrowed chords, you actually end up with a chord that exists in another key. In this example, you can see that you're creating an augmented chord. Okay, so yeah, this chord 1, most common in the places you're going to be doing this are your primary chords. So think of 2, 4, and 6 as your borrowed chords, and then your primary chords 1, 4, and 5 can be your altered chords. So chord 4 here can be altered, but it can also be part of the borrowed chords as well. And you tend to do it by making them augmented or diminished, as it says. Got chord 1. I think that was the GCSE one I was looking at last week. Excuse me. Let me see. I'm just going to jump into... Not the compositions, Declan. Where are you going? It should be the musicals. Let me see. I think it's from Carousel. Better not play this because, copyright again. Okay, if I just zip through this, this is from one of my A-level AS class. Let me see if I borrowed and altered chords. Yeah, there. Oh, it's an F major. Okay, well, no biggie. Yeah, okay. Actually, that should be. So. It's quite a lot of chromatic movement there. So again as bright as girls men. Yes, a lot of chromatic harmony in there with all those little accidentals. We're not going to spend. We could be here all night just analyzing this, but it's really just this chord here, this augmented chord 1. So I'll get rid of this and bring up the piano. So we're in F major, that's our chord 1. So that's your alter chord 1. And it's very like, you know, used a lot in musicals, especially from that era as well. So like a lot of post-war musicals in Broadway and West End. There's quite a lot of so you can hear how it wants to go up. It can go down as well. Yeah, it's got, again, sort of like a melancholy, you know, sort of sound to it. So that's what you're looking for. Again, that's meant to happen here as well when Billy, if you've ever known this musical carousel, he's thinking about his wife who's pregnant and about, you know, is it for up until now he just assumed it was going to be a boy and then realized, oh, it could be a girl, and that completely changes his character about, you know, being a proper father figure and, you know, actually looking after the child and everything. So it shows a different side to his character in the musical, and it's meant to be broader with warmth. Yeah, so even the direction in the score is telling you what you should be doing for that character, and that augmented triad is helping out there. Actually, it should be what is that? This is just for my own edification at this point. What is this chord? Oh, nice. Actually, should that not be an A? There's a lot of this. Like it's almost like tritones everywhere in the music as well. So there's a lot of because I think, spoiler alert, if you've not seen it before, you know, this character ends up not surviving the musical. So there is quite a bit of sort of pathos to this. And that should be. Is that meant to be F sharp? That's weird. My goodness. that F sharp there. This is the chord I'm attempting to play. I've got F sharps with E's. Yeah, very rich harmony there. So yeah, that's a good example of like borrowed chord 1. I always think of the cliche, we'll meet again. We'll meet again. Don't know where, don't know. That type of thing. The other one then is the altered chord 5. Now for me, that chord, called altered chord 4 is possible as well, but altered chord 5, that augmented chord 5, which is not written out here. If I just close this down, don't need him, and show you what that would look like in the key of, well, we'll do it in the key of G, get tired of C. Yeah, so there's your chord 5. Altered. It should be this. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that's your normal 5. Make it an altered chord 5. And you're taking that A and making it an A sharp. In blues music, that is your very common in turnarounds at the end of a phrase, the end of a section, to go back to chord 1. So let me see if I can find out where that is. What was it after that? I don't hear any others yet. What are you? Okay, so in the key of G, we've got a... I have to sit down and analyze that, but the main one is this. You can hear how it wants to go up. So chord 5 wants to go to chord 1 because the leading note wants to go up. If you add another note that wants to go up, the pull is even stronger. In fact, they usually slide off the keys to go upwards. There's another one. it's not. That's here, chord 4, altered. So notice a pattern here that for carousel, for carousel and F, going up. Usually when you're making a chord augmented, like we've done for those 3 chords, 1, 4, and 5, you're pulling something up, like usually the 5th, and you're making it an augmented 5th. So yeah, G to D sharp is an augmented 5th. So the whole thing, even though it's chord 1, there's an augmented 5th in there. It's pulling upwards, so it wants to resolve upwards, and all of them resolved upwards. Or resolved up. And for the C minor one, or C augmented, trying to figure out other places. There's something in my head with that, and I can't figure out where it is. No, it's not there. Okay, I'll go away and find out where I'm trying to think of chord. There's a brilliant piece that I've heard somebody play that has loads of augmented chord 4s, and I can't remember what it is. I got the chord 1 and 5s. That's the ones I wanted to use tonight anyway. But the 4, that's annoying now. It's going to grate at me that I can't figure what that chord 4 is. But I'll find it. And I'll put it into the blog post. Yeah. All my mistakes will be eradicated out, and then the blog post will have all the nice stuff. Okay. The diminished triad. That's another one. Yes. Not as common, I think, as the augmented. I had so many things in my buzzing around in my memory there. It was diminished. I'm struggling to think of any where you've got a minor chord 1 and you've made it a diminished chord 1. It's possible though. I'll keep a wee eye out for if I can. There's no examples that come to mind, and I was looking today, preparing for tonight, thinking, well, I'll see if I can find a few. So, and usually when my notes that come with all of these, that when I was teaching this in Queen's University in Belfast years ago, I have like notes for PowerPoint presentations that go in, underneath and play this example. There wasn't anything for that. So even back then, I couldn't come up with one. But I'll keep a wee eye out. And if you guys know of any piece of music that uses like altered chords for chord 1, do let me know. That'd be great. I would love to know so I can put it in. I'll just do more of a Google search and see if I can find it. But it isn't modulating. I should have said that. Yeah. So you don't want it like here where you're doing like chord 1, minor chord 1, and then, but that is actually part of that's not what I'm looking for, where it's modulating, changing key to A flat major or something. So yeah, it should be like, or something like this, where it's part of like a diminished chord. Yeah, where am I getting that from? There was something that almost came to mind. Just give you a sec to explore this idea. I'm thinking of a common tone diminished sixth, but was it? No, that's the real sixth. It should be the 5th then. it's still not coming. Okay. The gauntlet has been thrown down to you guys. If you know a piece of music that has chord 1 that at some stage is altered to a diminished chord, there's loads I can think of where it's altered to an augmented chord, but when it's altered to a diminished chord, that seems to be quite rare. At least in my head it is anyway. Okay, so there's the altered chords and the borrowed chords. I usually bring them, as you can see why I bring them together, because both of them involve like usually changing just one little note. I'm making what was a diatonic chord a chromatic chord. Usually when you do that and you create a new harmony from the parallel key, we're going to call those borrowed chords. But you often do that for chord 1, 4, and 5, altering the 5th of those chords, and you've created an entirely new harmony. It's not borrowed at all, but it's using the same idea of just altering one of the notes. Usually, it's going to be the augmented ones that you'll find rather than the diminished. At least that's been my experience for this. Okay. Yeah, let me see. Do you know, I might leave the augmented 6th chords as our last one and have a go at doing that next week. Yeah, I think so, because it deserves a wee bit more attention than just half an hour. Yeah, I think I'll do that next week then. Augmented 6ths. Yeah, it's actually quite a long wee handout actually. To see if there are any examples that are playable for me anyway. Oh yeah. Nice. Yeah, Beethoven. And that's not deliberate. I just want to see why I've chosen 3. It's just coincidence. Okay. Yeah, we shall look at augmented 6th chords next week, so I'll just close him down. So what have we looked at so far, guys? We've looked at diatonic harmony, we've looked at borrowed chord harmony, we've looked at Neapolitan harmony, we're going to look at we've looked at altered chords, and we're going to look at augmented 6th chords next week, and we've looked at secondary dominants. So it's basically all of these. You can actually see, guys, that in here I've put in the secondary leading note chords as well. They're not as common, and in fact, if you're using secondary dominants with a 7th, you know that the notes are already all in there. They behave exactly the same way that 7 of 2 is followed by chord 2. And you probably want to put it in where this chord naturally is going to occur in whatever key, and then raise that note so it becomes the 7 of 2. This is in the key of C major still, isn't it? I think. Yeah, 7, well, 2 would be D minor. Yeah, 7 of 2 is going to be that C sharp diminished chord. That's going to want to go to the D minor chord. And that's your chord 2. Chord 1. So, yeah, you've got your 1, 7 of 2. So even though I've got all of these chords in there, all of these 7s, 7 of 2, 7 of 3, 7 of 4, 7 of 5, 7 of 6, you don't really need to go that far in your mind. You just really need to know the secondary dominants really well, and just imagine that you're adding a 7th onto them, and you're going to have all the notes already in this chord belonging also to the leading note chord, the 7 of 6, the 7 of 2, or whatever. So if you learn one, if you learned the secondary dominants, you're kind of learning the secondary leading note chords anyway. So that's why I never went through them with you guys when we did this class before, because we were kind of going through them without you really knowing them. So you'll see that when we start going into a bit more advanced analysis and stuff. For any of you guys who come to me for music theory, you'll see these popping in every so often. You'll think it doesn't look like a secondary dominant because I can't find the root of the chord, and then that'll be when I'll say, could it be the secondary leading note? It involves similar notes, and then if that usually is what it is. So we have actually looked at all of that in a sort of roundabout way. So it's really only going to be the augmented 6th chords and the half and fully diminished seventh chords, along with the common tone diminished seventh chords as well. We'll be looking at those. So maybe at the most, 2 more classes for chromatic harmony, and that will be it. And as I say, that's as advanced as it ever goes, like for grade 8 theory anyway. You know, you don't really have to sort of go beyond that in terms of jazz analysis unless you want to actually specifically go into jazz stuff. We can. But it doesn't get any more complicated than this, harmonically speaking, guys. This is the most advanced stuff. This is grade 8 theory. In fact, that's where a lot of my handouts are now living for this. They all started off life as for university stuff. Yeah, that's the beginning of it. But if I actually go into my little bag here, just show you guys where all this stuff started off as. Harmony. Yeah. Oh, this is all updated 2022, because a lot of the stuff comes from like 2012. So let me see if I can just. Well, that's 2018. At handout and secondary function chords. 2020. 2026. Yeah, it's a bit of a mishmash of everything. 2018. The earlier stuff comes from much. Yeah, all of this was based on stuff that I was teaching. This entire harmony folder was based on stuff I was teaching at Queen's. Yeah, look like lesson 11. Yeah, diminished 7th, augmented 6th, and Neapolitan chords all in one lesson. I suppose that was over 2 days. Lesson 11 really should have been week 11. Yeah, so there's all the stuff in there. Yeah, and now it's actually all living over here in the grade 6, grade 7, and grade 8. So when I open up the grade 8 handouts, guys, you should see, for any of you guys who are doing grade 8 with me, if I zoom in a wee bit. Yeah, there's our borrowed chords and altered chords handout. Exactly the same as what we were looking at tonight. Okay, except it's for questions 4 and 5 in grade 8 theory. So if you guys aren't doing, if there's anyone here who's watching this on the website or even on YouTube, if you've popped in, if you are not doing grade 8 theory and you're kind of able to semi-follow some of this, that's really impressive, because like this is top drawer stuff, like music theoretical stuff that you're dealing with. Borrowed chords, altered chords, next week augmented 6th chords. I'm not going to go through all of these, guys. That's like an entire course that I would take with grade 8 students, and there's one for grade 7 as well and one for grade 6. So if you're interested in those courses, you can visit the website, get in touch with me if you want to really get stuck into it and understand it really thoroughly, and not just like a 1 hour YouTube video. Okay, so we haven't got far to go for chromatic harmony anyway. Let me see. If I just open up, make sure this still works for you guys. This will be the last thing I want to do. Yeah, 7. Da da da. Ba ba bum. Okay, so what ones have we not have in here? Okay. Radio. Well, what I'll probably want to do then is, before I give you guys, for any of you guys who are doing the theory courses with me, what I'll do is I'm going to import the secondary dominants in here as well, just to let you hear them. Yeah, just to be a wee bit more comprehensive with it. Might as well. I've done everything else, like all the, yeah, the German augmented 6th, French augmented 6th, and the Italian augmented 6th. Did I do the common tone diminished 7ths? I don't think so. I did. Wow, okay. And the altered chord? Yeah, I did, okay. Anyway, well, it's only the purple ones then that I want to sort of fill in. Yeah, because at the moment it's only giving me chord 6, but I want you guys to be able to click on any of these and hear any of the harmonies. Okay, so I'll do that for next time. Okay. And for any of you guys who are just visiting, you know, just for the crack of it, just to hear a bit more and understand a bit more about music theory and the most advanced music theory harmony anyway. Yeah, this will be all up on the website for you guys as well. Obviously nowhere near as much detail as the guys in the courses are getting, but still it's, you know, it's going to be a summary, but it might be handy if you're into that sort of thing. Okay, so yep. Let me just close everything down. I'm just going to check the community just to see if anyone's left any questions that I forgot or should have asked or answered. Let me just go in here 2 secs, guys. Put it over here just so no one sees. Community. Sometimes it's a wee bit buggy for me to get in here. Maybe it's because I'm on a Mac. It doesn't like Macs. Oh, I'm in. No, I'm not. There's much more to the community than this. Why is it not loading? Try that again. If this ever happens to you guys, just keep clicking on this or refresh the page just to see, does that help? It's maybe particularly bad for Safari. Yeah, oh, there we go. Oh, the Neapolitan's up. Okay. I want to check to make sure was there anything else. A secondary dominance should have been up there as well. Let me just go back a wee bit just to be sure. Time signatures. Oh, okay. Chords. Yeah, I should have posted that actually. That's bad. Just cut the Neapolitan. If you go to the home page, guys, if you've created an account with me, if you've a free account, anyone can do it. So if you try to go to topscoremusicacademy.com, it will look like this, and it'll be asked to sign in and create an account. And this is where all the lives are. But if you go up to the blog, it definitely should be there. The Neapolitan chord is there. Anything in red is the theory stuff, like what we're doing here. There's the secondary dominance there. That should have appeared in my community. It didn't. Okay, if we click on that just to show you what it looks like. Yeah, there's the YouTube video, the whole playback of the lesson, and then just a sort of summary of everything that we were looking at that lesson. Yeah, so it's all there if you want to go ahead and, you know, download stuff or make notes or whatever, or listen back to the original video. That's there as well. Okay, so nice V1 tonight, I thought. Yeah, I like borrowed chords and altered chords because there's not much in terms of theory to them. You're just really altering one little note or changing one little note or borrowing something from another key. So it's kind of a nice easier one, I think, than like the Neapolitan or the secondary dominance, or definitely the augmented sixths that we're looking at next week, because there's quite a few steps to them, you know, that you have to sort of find a particular interval and make a particular chord and then treat it as something in that key. Whereas for borrowed chords and altered chords, it's like change that note and that's it. Take your normal chord 1, raise the 5th. That's it. So it's kind of nice. Radio. Okay, we shall leave it there tonight, guys. And as usual, like and subscribe can really help out this channel. Please do. And also, please check out the website as well. And there's lots of free stuff there. All those blogs, they're there. You can download whatever you like, whatever you want. And also, there's quite a few things if you join the community, if you're interested in Irish trad music. That's one of the things I teach a lot of, bouzouki and tin whistle. And trad flute will be making an appearance at some stage over the next week or two. My basic trad flutes, I'm having one made at the moment, and that'll be ready, I think, hopefully for next term. next semester. We'll see. So yeah, there's quite a bit going on in terms of lessons, in terms of theories on the website, and you're more than welcome to join. And I shall see you guys again next week at Tuesday at 6:15 for the practice with me session. That's going to be on YouTube as well.